Okay.
Actually, for those of you that don't know Gesche, she's also a member of our supervisory board as well, and it's a great honor to actually have somebody from the design profession represent SAP also on the supervisory board. So I think that's a great move for all of us that are here in the design area.
I will do my best.
All right, great. So, yeah, I would echo what Anna just said. It's awesome to see so many people here now at the end of what's been an amazing day with an absolute incredible amount of content, of experiences, of talks, of people, of discussion, and so on. So it's good to see people here now. We're going to actually get through what I think are some important perspectives on what's been happening, including your own in terms of questions, but do that quickly in order to get to the beer bash as soon as possible as well. So let me just ask, first of all, who's had an amazing day today? Just raise your hands. Let me hear it. And so because of that, I want to start with something that we usually end with. But that start is just a huge thanks to Anna and to the whole team who've been involved in this, which is really everybody about it. The first topic that I started to sense as we've been walking around and the conversations that we've been having sort of starts out big picture, because it seems to me that what we're seeing here today reflects something that you see also around us every day, or in the media, in the news, with customers, which is that it feels like there's an inflection point in terms of the role of design in particular, and technology, and society, or the way demographics are changing, and the opportunities. You're seeing a whole different level of conversations that in some ways are more systemic about the impact or the problem to solve, or new problems to solve that we didn't even see. But at least that was my perspective, that if we're hitting an inflection point, it really does seem to be taking off in terms of design and where it's going. I wanted to ask you two that because you're seeing it also from different perspectives. I mean, Gesche, you're looking at everything from SAP to macroeconomies to specific technologies in your lab. Are you seeing this as an inflection point as well?
I think very much so. My perception of design also changed through my career. I'm a trained designer. I studied design in the 1990s with this, the internet was new and we started all programming websites and to earn our money. And now I really understand that design is so powerful, but that also means that we have a lot to give, but also we have to be aware of this power. So how can we drive innovation in a direction? So that means that we have to know what the values are. And for me, and also in my research lab in Berlin, we are very much value focused and user focused. So that means, is the vision that we have an inclusive digital society, for example? So do we get everybody on board, or do we kind of widen the digital divide? Do we leverage the potential of technology, but also do we give kind of the direction of where technology should be heading? And I think that we can do this through design, because we should be aware of this power of design to get users on board, to get the diversity of people on board, to give them access to technology, and to give them also access to develop their own innovations, so create this kind of open ecosystem. And for me, design is the driver for that. It's not the technology, it's not the business side, but it's really the design that can drive this change and transformation.
I like that, design is the driver. I mean, Sam, you've seen this as well at SAP in particular, our journey. We've spoken about this while some people know this really well, and other people are just getting a sense of it. Do you feel that we're still at this point where all of a sudden even more new things are possible for us now?
Yeah, I mean, I always see, it's nice to every once in a while look back and reflect on the progress that we've made, but I also see how much more impact that we can still have just within SAP, within our ecosystem. But in terms of this inflection point, I mean, if you just look over there's a whole bunch of pictures of Hasso and President Park from South Korea, right? I mean, that's, when you're talking inflection point, when you're talking about heads of states that are actually wanting to bring design into the economy, right? The president of South Korea, if you're a nation, do you want to be known as a manufacturing nation, or do you want to be known as a creative economy, a manufacturing economy, a creative economy? A lot of the Asian cultures are choosing to invest in design because they want to be part of the creative economy, and this is something that we're all part of.
Nice. I think one thing I wanted to touch on as well that's called out, and I think you picked up on some of these also, would be the new technologies or the new modes of interaction that we're seeing out here. Sam, I know you mentioned some of this morning. Gesche, you've been seeing this in your lab, but today you show up here, we're seeing everything from the HoloLens to discussions about AR and VR, voice, as I said before. What's your perspective on some of the different interaction modes and technologies that you think are most influential now?
Like 10 years ago, I learned from really basic research about multimodal interaction, and they were kind of envisioning exactly what we have now here in reality. And we were talking about, in the 1990s already, about the cyberspace, and we're all virtual, and what's going to happen there. And now it's there. So I think that we have to be very much aware also of the design power driving these kind of technologies that are now there, because how do we want to, in an intuitive way, interact with that? And does this, again, enable very diverse people to interact with technology? So those who are maybe illiterate, or maybe who are differently abled, or maybe who, whatever, so there are very new kinds of modes of interaction with all these wearable pieces of technology, for example. And this is wonderful, because this also, puts us away from this staring at small, tiny little interfaces, so and typing on tiny little keyboards, because this is really, down. And so this is a wonderful world of having kind of natural interaction, and bringing this together with this potential, for example, of HANA, of real-time data interaction. So you've got real-time data, you've got all those kinds of natural interfaces, these modes of interacting in space. This is amazing. And I think if we bring those two powers together, this is, that's a bright future. And there's a lot of things to do for interaction designers.
That's cool. I love your example of 10 years ago. It reminded me just for a second of a comment I heard Vishal Sikka mentioned, who some of us know around here, actually more like 6 years ago or so. And at that point we were working on something, trying to look ahead 10 years. And Vishal made the point that everything that's going to happen 10 years from now, you can see today. And it's sort of what you're talking about now reminds me of that. The future is all around us if we just sort of look and can pick out these pieces. We've seen and focused a lot on the technology, and I thought maybe I wanted to pick up on something else you just said, which you mentioned inclusion and inclusive design. It's something that if we think about societies or populations, people in an enterprise or people in a school, that seems also to be emerging. Can you talk just for a minute about what you are seeing or thinking about as important in terms of inclusive design versus, say, universal?
The term universal design I heard first when I was studying design, and I was invited to stay in Japan for a while. That was 1997, and they were talking about universal design. And that was my first, that's universal design. And it really changed a lot since then. So now we're not talking about, one size fits it all, but very much about very diverse groups of users. And in my research lab, we are working, for example, with blind people, with deaf-blind people, with people with dementia, with just elderly people, with women. So wow. So very, very diverse groups, and this is not for being just politically correct or targeting different user groups, but it's the source of inspiration and of innovation. So diversity and inclusive design inspires us that the variety of the society has a certain view on technology or has certain needs towards technology and digitization. And this is wonderful. So on the one hand side, it's a value, so to create inclusive design, but also it's a driving force for a whole range of new ideas, of new technologies, because there's so much diversity in the society. And it's good to know people, to get them involved, to do participatory design processes, just to step into their shoes and to know about their challenges in everyday life. And there's a whole lot to develop and to transform in that direction.
Great. Sam, actually maybe this gets to you, because when you think about universal design, I can think also about a specific population group, which would be workers in the enterprise, which usually would be served that way. Obviously, we've been thinking about that differently now, but even now, Sam, as you look at the user research we're doing, you think about conversations with end users, what are you seeing in terms of what end users are looking for?
Yeah. Look, I mean, the trend of consumerization of IT is something that we've talked about for a long time, right? You know, people are looking for a much more rich experience when they're interacting with their apps at work, and you know, the blurring of the personal life and the work life, right? You know, why is it so difficult to do the same tasks that it's so easy to do in your personal life, like booking something and buying something? So, I think that's important. You know, for those of you that, you know, most of you are from SAP, but one of the most difficult conversations I usually have for people outside of enterprise, the enterprise world, is why is design so difficult, right? You know, user-centered design has been around for, you know, at least since the late 80s, early 90s, and as a practice. You know, so why is it so difficult? But you know, there's this notion of enterprise software where you're actually selling to a part of the organization, but you're designing for another part of the organization, right? You're designing for the end users, but you're selling to a different part of the organization. And that other part of the organization thinks that they represent the end users and their perspectives, but oftentimes they don't, right? Marisol and her team just led a big research project with our favorite customer, Nestle, a couple months ago. A lot of, actually, who went to Manila in this room? A lot of you were all there. So, massive project. I heard you guys work really hard, but also had some fun as well. But the interesting story that I usually tell from that whole experience is we heard from the IT organization that they knew exactly what their end users needed, right? They went through scenario by scenario, kind of named it. They went through this. They went through kind of all the clicks. They showed exactly how all the apps should work. They showed how, you know, these things could be improved. And it turns out, you know, there was like 3 different categories that, you know, that when the actual research happened, when we actually had that interaction. You know, 50% of it was, yeah, they were kind of right. And then, you know, something like 20-ish% of it where, you know, there was some gray zone, right? You know, they're kind of right, but they really kind of missed a whole bunch of things. And then there was that last category where they completely missed the mark, right? There was this scenario which actually, there wasn't actually a user. You know, they couldn't actually find the user that was like supposed to be done, right? So that's why it's so difficult, I think, for enterprise software. Is, you know, why it's so important that we continue to push and not just be satisfied with talking to our customers and our interface point with the customers, but really drilling down to the people that are actually using the software.
Maybe I'll stick with you for a second, Sam, because in that vein of what a team can do, what an individual can do, or what a team, you know, comprised of the right people from across an organization sent around the world can do. Reminds you of this point that, you know, to have the biggest possible impact, you have to scale. You know, how can you take one designer and scale him or her in terms of their impact? How can you take a team and scale that impact? And I know we've spoken a lot, and some people have heard our discussions about scaling design across IT, but I'm not sure people know the full richness of what we're doing there. So I wonder if you could just take another minute and talk about what you see us doing next in order to not just help the designer within an organization, but also to help spread the word, spread the capability.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat some of my talk tracks from previous talks, but there's a huge lack of design awareness within enterprise software in general, right, or the IT industry in general, right? I've often kind of used the analogy where, you know, if you look at consumer software, you have more of like a 1-to-10 ratio between designers and the development organization. At SAP, it's actually more like 1-to-100. It's getting a little bit better. I think it's like 1-to-75 now, I think, or something like that over the last 3 or 4 years. Still not great, but getting better. But if you look at our customers, it's like 1-to-1,000. Right? It's really, really that bad. And if you scale, you know, 50,000 suite installations over the world, you see how many designers are truly necessary if we want to get to that consumer thing. So I think we believe that we have to not only make our products better, but educate the entire industry. So we were investing a lot in education. You know, we're partnering with Don Norman and Scott Clemmer from UCSD to provide educational training. You know, this design for non-designers course that we put up. You know, this open free course. I think is a good start. We will continue to invest to make sure that the industry gets up to speed. Not necessarily to produce designers. You know, we don't think that, you know, taking a 10-week MOOC class all of a sudden you get the experience needed to be a graphic designer or interface designer or even a researcher. But at least get the awareness, the appreciation from people in different disciplines on the power and the reason that we do this design process.
Okay. All right. So one last question, then, and Gesche, maybe to you. I mean, Sam used the word education. I know that's something that's a passion for you as well. You had commented about in your time in Silicon Valley so far, which is a total of maybe 6 hours or so today. You've noticed the diversity on a number of different dimensions, including age. And so as you think maybe more on a macro level about education, about coding, about a digital economy, what are some of the things that you think are most important to see, to change, to understand as both SAP as a company, as the technology industry, and as our economies overall grow?
I think SAP as a big company could be one of the drivers also for pushing forward digital education also. This, should start in primary school but end, at 99 or 110 or something. So really, like elderly people should have access to digital training. And so in Germany, it's a disaster, the situation, because we don't have any kind of coding skills in school. So there's really no training. And there's also what I call like data literacy. There's really no concept of really teaching this. And I think that as a company, SAP has also a responsibility to provide and help people to be part of this digital society. I was mentioning earlier this digital divide, and this is widening. It's not closing, it's widening. And so there is already this wonderful training and teaching landscape of SAP, and there is already open SAP. And I think that this opening up this learning ecosystem is wonderful, and it's a societal task, but also good for the company to have this exchange. So an open education system is very inspiring also. And I think this is a trend that I really recognize very much, that on the one hand side, big companies also engage in training and offering skills, and also basic digital skills, like Udacity offering those nano degrees together with other companies. And this is wonderful. There are many initiatives like the Hours of Code, or in Europe there's the Code Week and the Code Week Award, where you've got at least one week of workshops for free for kids all over Europe. And so this is really an exchange, it's fun, it's societal responsibility to provide this data literacy, basic coding skills, so to let all the citizens understand how an algorithm in principle works, how coding in principle works, what's behind this black box, and how they can relate to it. Because in Germany and in Europe we have a lot of also discussion about digital sovereignty and privacy and data protection and all this kind of issues. And in Germany they're a bit hysteric about it, so big data is like, wow, what's happening? And in a way I understand it, because they don't know, what happens with my data. And this is a topic that we really have to address also as a company, because we have to be transparent about, what's this thing, big data, and what's the analytical power behind the algorithms. And that's good, and we can have a discourse on that. And this is a part of a bigger understanding of how education should evolve and be a really open system, and this would be beneficial for the company too. And I think that there are many parts already that are put in place, and it could be broadened up a bit.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's clear, just amazing problems out there to still address, but also opportunities, and as you said, to address it as a designer or as somebody with a design mindset. And so from my perspective, it'll be fascinating to see what happens in 10 years from exactly as we said earlier, the things that are already emerging. I want to thank you both for these comments, but let's take a minute or two, if we can, and see if there are any questions from the audience.
We all know SAP is great and has talented designers, the best in Silicon Valley. But in terms of improvement, and you have that outside perspective, what do you think we as an organization could work on next?
Thank you very much. So I spent here 6 hours for today, and I got already so many inspirations from here. So when I look at you, this this atmosphere, this vibe, this diversity of people, so many young women here. Oh, it's amazing. There was one young lady sitting in the audience 2 hours ago or something. She had a sticker on her laptop saying, keep calm and keep on coding. So this is the right attitude. So I think that you guys really should inspire the whole company. So you should be the supervisors of the supervisory board and get this spirit across, because there's a mixture of very different nationalities, very different backgrounds, very different expertises, and that's very good. And this kind of also just meeting here on eye to eye level, on like nice little chairs and grab a coffee. This kind of informal style, I like that very much. So this is really the attitude that we have, because we share the responsibility and we share also the passion for changing things. And this is really the inspiration that I get from here. So you're my supervisors. I take your experience to Baldorf and all the other.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll walk into it.
So I want to go back to the very first presentation this morning when you were doing your keynote, and you were talking about the challenge that IT has. This is that right now most of what they're doing is keeping the lights on, and very little of what they're doing is driving innovation. So we've done a great thing about talking about innovation here. When we look internally, how do we help people change from a mindset of turning the lights on and keeping them going and driving innovation?
I think there's no better change than kind of the fear of not surviving, right? So I think it's hard. When I first joined SAP 10 years ago, user experience was a really difficult topic to drive, because why? We were the market leader in enterprise software. Salesforce was tiny. There wasn't even a Workday at the time, right? Oracle, we were kind of neck and neck with Oracle, but we were kind of pulling away from just a pure enterprise apps perspective. Also had the vision that said, hey, we could do much better on user experience, and that's why he invested in design thinking. But there was no crisis, right? So the reason why I used those slides this morning is there was a crisis in IT, and if IT doesn't change that perception, everybody knows it. When we talk with the business and we ask the business, what's your perception of IT? We ask that question because SAP is associated with IT, and that same perception of IT is also reflected upon ourselves. So the adjectives that people use are, robust, reliable, but slow, not fast enough, inflexible, and not innovative. So I think painting that crisis moment, and if you look at the innovative CIOs, they are really driving change and really shaking things up and reevaluating things. I truly believe if we don't help our customers and raise their profile within their own organizations, then we're going to be dragged along with it.
A couple weeks ago, we had a CIO and some of his senior lieutenants here at the EDC, and somebody explained, what was going on, and they said, "Why are you here? What have you get out of it?" And they said, the CIO said, "Well, our CEO said, never waste a good crisis, and we're seeing a crisis in technology right now." Anyone else? No? Okay. So that means, once again, thank you, incredible day, absolutely amazing, and let's go drink some beer.
Wait,
and see
no.
Gap House.
But I know